All right. Good morning. Let's talk about the freight market right after this. Yeah. Check. 1, 2. Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone and everybody. We are live for the first time in 10 days, so I apologize for that. We are dealing with a bunch of stuff, but we're handling it. And just work was crazy last week. If you are dispatching yourself or know a dispatcher or know a truck trying to dispatch themselves, last week was, and I want to show some numbers that kind of reflect that. But not all is bad. Not all is bad. There's some good news on the horizon, believe it or not. So I just want to go over that a little bit. I apologize, I haven't been live, and I'm going to be working on hopefully some members only material because I feel like I neglect you guys and gals, so I got to stop doing that. Um, now I've been reading this really good book, Atomic Habits, and it's helped me with a few things because a lot of times I get distracted, right? I think we live in this world of distraction, and and that's the thing. So I remember when I was driving, I would sit there, I'd pull up to the truck stop, you back up, you don't quite want to go in the sleeper yet because the spots next to you aren't taken yet, and so you kind of you want to babysit your hood and mirrors, make sure no one wipes you out. And so that was a perfect time for me to set up that desk that clips on your steering wheel, and I would just do some doom rolling. And as a truck driver, you deal with cortisol, dopamine, stress. You don't sleep right, you don't eat right, and so it's easy to fall into bad habits. And a lot of times, when we should be doing our numbers or we should be, updating our, you know, uh, accounting programs and, like trucking office and things like that, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or maybe we're on YouTube watching the drama channels, this person's he said, she said stuff, and I'm going to call the cops and I'm going to, all that crap. And it's entertaining. I think there was a point in time where I was doing well as an owner operator, and I had this routine, which was a habit, where I would found myself usually parked at the TA in the bobtail area, um, there in London, Ohio, and I would pig out on Popeye's chicken, and I would watch Netflix. That was my thing. That was, if I was at one of the Schneider yards, I'd buy one of them big, burritos or something that was great for me, and do the Netflix thing, right? And binge watch, all these different shows like Dexter, SOA, Breaking Bad and all them. And, then I get home and I wouldn't be able to spend time with my family because I was updating my Trucking Pro, accounting software. And I wasn't, it's like we get in these bad habits. And so I knew when I got off the road, I knew I had to try to nip them in the bud. Well, sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. So we've strayed from the diet at times, but we're back on track. It's the little things. And Atomic Habits is a book about change, but it's very small, right? And what I've noticed when I dispatch, 5 drivers that, let's say that they were struggling before they called on my services, basically what I try to show them is that every little bit counts. Every time you're moving, every time, it may not be the best rate at times, may not be the best situation, but at least you're moving, because everybody I know, myself included, because I used to sit a lot, I can't find a load. I can't find a load, right? And I would sit a lot. That was back in my Landstar days. I didn't realize that, to make money, you got to just keep moving. The rates will work itself out. The details will work itself out. However, last week's frustration was due to scheduling. I'll get into that in a minute. But, little tiny habit changes, and if you want to doom scroll on Facebook, well, then do something you need to do first as a reward, then do the Facebook thing. That's kind of what the Atomic Habits, that's the chapter I'm at now. And so it's important to work on yourself it's more important than working on your business, to be honest with you, because if you're not right, it doesn't matter if you're good at business or not, because eventually it's going to catch up. You could be the best budgeter, the best business person, but if you don't have enjoyment, if you don't have an outlet, you burn yourself out. What's all that money that you're making if you're just going to burn yourself out and go to drinking and do all these negative things that affect your health? Well, it was literally a complete waste of time. And that's one of the most frustrating aspects of being a truck driver, is the utter lack of respect for your time. You get to a shipper receiver, yeah, it's going to be 8 hours unload. And so what are you doing during those 8 hours? You can get on Facebook or YouTube and gripe about how crappy that shipper is or whatever. But at the end of the day, it does not matter. You got to work on yourself. And then you have these great opportunities to listen to audiobooks going down the road, or to watch informative and learning YouTube videos versus the drama stuff, or versus the open stuff like watching truck wrecks and stuff like that. And I've been guilty of breaking all those rules. And I know at the end of the day, I don't feel good. I don't sleep right. I'm in the sleeper after I've doom scrolled. You can't sleep right. Well, it's the same thing at home. So it's important to work on yourself versus just, like I said, you could be the best business person. I guarantee you that if you have negative habits for your health, you're probably not in the best shape business wise either. And that's the thing. Self-improvement in all areas helps everything else. It's addictive. Make that the addiction. So so we'll get to the comments. Obviously, there's some really good comments going here, and we're going to go over a report that CDN happily gives me every week, and also we're going to go over some volumes. Volumes in the Southeast have dropped dramatically. I've told a couple of our drivers not to go down there, and there was a time where you couldn't get me out of there because that's what I was doing. And the Midwest is waking up, though. That's the good news. I mentioned some good news in the morning. The good news is the Midwest is waking up. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas are all looking pretty good. Michigan's even doing okay. Iowa's okay. And we'll go over those volumes. But for the most part, Georgia and Florida are back to their normal selves. And I've seen it in our Georgia drivers that have been running down there. I see it in the rates coming out of there. And I've been careful not to chase the big money going down there because I don't want to struggle to come back up. So I'm trying to go for consistency. If you can do so much per day in a consistent market back and forth, that's better than doing, $3,000 one direction and $1,000 the other direction. You don't have consistency with that. So, and then you tend to run the same customers, you use the same brokers, and there's hardly any surprises. Or when something does come up, they're quick to give you the detention or layover, things of that nature. We had a load, one of our drivers, she was on her way to pick it up, and broker calls and said, "Hey, man, they're not open till 3:30. They're only open till 2:30. So I'm going to give you a tow new." I'm like, "Okay." And then I turn around and book the same load the next day that had better times for more money than what I originally booked it for. So little things like that, and I was able to do that with the same broker. So I mean, it's the broker relationship that kind of helped that situation, and it was a better tonu than what most other brokers are doing. So, it's I see a comment about burnout, and I'll get to the comments here in a minute. Consistency creates a lower stress environment, and if you have a lower stress environment, the odds of burnout decrease dramatically. In other words, if you're doing the same runs and the same brokers and the same customers over and over and over, you're not worried about the details of where you're going to park, if they're going to get you unloaded in time. You're not worried about those details. And so therefore it makes the trucking a lot easier. And that was one of the things I experienced. I could tell you exactly what I was doing at Schneider, and I always ended up at that London, Ohio TA in the bobtail area because I was dropping my trailer literally across the street, and next exit down, and getting loaded, and then I'd go pick up the trailer and head down to Texas, where I would deliver in Fort Worth at the same customer, and then I would go north to Durant, Oklahoma, where I pick up a big lots load that went up to Springfield. That was my MO. That's how I got home. I made the big money going into Texas, deadheaded out of Dallas, so I didn't have to worry about all the traffic and stuff as much. And it was very, it wasn't 100% stress-free, but it was a lot easier to deal with than the guy that were trying to make these $1,500 a week truck payments and, having the zigzag all over the place with no consistency whatsoever. And so the lower you can stress, the lower you can, the quicker you can lower your stress level, the better off you'll be. You'll have some clarity. You'll be able to work on yourself. And that's my suggestion. I know it's hard right now. Expenses are through the roof. If you got a truck with no warranty, I hope you make it. But between the shippers and trucks, creating downtime, use that time wisely because you're not going to get it back. One of the things I'm seeing a lot last week, and let me get the screen up here. Actually, no, let's go to the comments first. You guys have been commenting. Sean Fairmont, what's up? How you doing? Desert Okie Pam, good morning. You will receive a phone call soon. TK, hey now. Hey now. Jerome Jones, what's up? Cheap Freight Hauler, good morning from Indiana. Mrs. A is in the house. Got $2 out of Georgia, feeling happy. Good deal. I got $2 out of Texas. No. I found the lane in Texas that's working. Partially, depending on where it's going. I am late. Good morning, says CDN. You wouldn't believe how bad it is now booking loads from a load board. At 50% of carriers are not qualified. Dispatcher lie about where their truck is. No professionalism. I agree with that. Why I agree with that? Because of the way I'm treated when I do show professionalism, when I do show that I know where the truck is, when I do give them a link to the ELD, it's given me some leverage. Now, with that being said, a lot of brokers, and now I want you to go through my YouTube shorts, guys. Okay. DAT was live and they're answering questions. So I got on there, and there's not a whole lot of people in their live feeds, but I got on there and I asked, how do you feel about a lot of brokers doing away with open load boards and doing their own? How's that affecting you? And, after, tripping on my name, they go, they're not, they're very smug about it. And meanwhile, since that short is aired, I have noticed, I'm don't take my word for it, right? Open DAT, open 123. Do you see CH Robinson? Do you see well, I mean, you will they'll spam the crap out of a load board, right? But do you see CH Robinson? You might see an RXO load here and there. But every morning I'm opening like 20 tabs to the broker's load boards. Why? Because I can see the details, I can see the times, And then a lot of times if I go to DAT, if it's RXO, RTS, or somebody like that, I'll go to their website and go see if I can find that load there so I can see the times. And then, when I email and call brokers, they're not answering the phone, or I leave them voicemails. And so I think a lot of, I was looking at the volumes on DAT yesterday, and I'm like, man, these are low volumes for, Chris rate should be starting here. It probably is starting here. However, let's take FedEx Ground. They have a brokerage. Did you guys know that? When was the last time you ever saw a FedEx load on a load board? I saw one time. I booked it. It was for my own truck. It annoyed Jeff because their carrier packet was ridiculously long and stupid, right? However, since then, the dispatch email at Like Trucking gets about literally, and I'm not exaggerating here, 50 to 100 emails from them every day. If there's a carrier that needs their own load board, it's FedEx. So FedEx, if you're watching, I doubt it because I'm nothing in the YouTube universe. Get your own load board. And those loads aren't hitting the load board. And so every day we get hundreds of emails at the carrier of loads that aren't hitting load boards because of the frustration that CDN is displaying right there. So while I do promote 123 load board, I'm worried about them because, and here's the other thing with load boards. This is going to be a game changer. Mark my words. Jeff and I were talking about this yesterday. Highway.com is creating their own load board. One of the biggest companies that has 99% of all the information. I'm talking, they have the latings, they have the customers, they have the factoring companies, they have the loads that carriers are doing, right? They have all that information, all of it. Have created are creating a load board. What do you think that's going to do? Because if a broker posts on an open load board like 123 DAT, they have to vet that carrier. Imagine posting to a load board where you don't have to vet the carrier, because the carrier would have to pass some qualifications to get on the load board. And so 123, they're going to struggle for a bit because the game is changing. I've had to change how I play the game, and I'm not the only one. And so that's a word of warning, right? Cheap free hauler asked CDN what disqualifies a carrier. Bull of Woods, good morning. On the flip side, I bet most carriers feel the same about brokers. We need to set up the trucking game to supply chain and add some complexity to make this industry more difficult, push out money grabbers. I agree with that to a certain extent. However, sometimes things are too complicated and the job doesn't get done. Perfect example. A lot of these brokers, when you email, you're emailing a chain. Do a Nolan transportation load and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's literally 10 emails going out. 10 email addresses going out. And what happens is I saw this, not with Nolan, it was a different broker, but what happened yesterday was I had one person in the chain ask me, what's the ETA to the driver or to the shipper? Of course, I couldn't get a hold of the driver because in the truck I dispatched. And then another person in the chain who's not hitting reply all, asking for the driver information, which was already sent. And then another email from a person asking ETA, and then another email from a different person saying that the load was canceled. Per the driver, who had obviously talked to the brokerage because his truck broke down. And so when it comes to carriers not emailing the brokers, there's a frustration there because you've got somebody from India calling you at 10 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning for a load that you're picking up at 1 p.m., asking if you're still good, what your ETA is, okay? And then you have people in the email chain not responding to each other, not reading. And so that by the time the driver, he's gotten 10 phone calls, he's updated 10 different people separately on the email chain, probably texting somebody as well. Nobody's talking to each other. So the system is broken. Meanwhile, C.H. Robinson has a tracking app. Simplified, you're talking to one person in your email chain. As long as you update the app, they don't even call you. And they're the biggest, most profiting brokerage on the planet. They've simplified their system. They're not outsourcing. Yeah, they've laid a lot of people off, and they're probably outsourcing their overnight stuff. But at the same time, they're not spamming load boards. Yesterday, logistics had literally 30, the one load or the same, like one from one place to another, posted 30 times in the course of 5 minutes. And they did that every 5 minutes to the point that I had to block them on DAT because it wasn't a load I was interested in, but yet now I'm having to thumb through 100 loads, but only 20 of them actually exist. Now, the thing with the reason why brokers are also going to their own load boards is because they can keep those analytics for themselves. And that's a thing too. And so now DAT just acquired Convoy, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I haven't read into it. I just know that they did that. And so who knows what they're going to do with that? It'll be interesting. All right. Sterling Wills in the house. In all caps. High burnout in my board, 12-stepper voice. Reports of double brokering frequently. Cancel loads. Safety address is connected to other known bad carriers. IP addresses don't match. Email, telephone number not matching. New authority goes on and on. Also unsettled claim, ongoing late delivery. Chief says thanks, and I'm starting to seek out the brokers that use Highway instead of just looking for inspections. Highway is a cross-referencing numerous data about a carrier to determine the carrier score. $2 per mile. Gen Z Trucking, are they power-only FedEx loads? No, these are full-blown brokerage. They've got a full-blown brokerage, Gen Z. And once you're on their email list, they will not. They pummel you with freight, and their pay is actually pretty decent for the most part. So, DAT bought Convoy's technology, and Truckstop introduced private loadboards. In the next few months, I believe more brokers will have their own loadboard. DAT is acting as a broker. Interesting. DIY Semi, good morning. I checked Highway Loadboard. Only loads they had that I qualified for were JB Hunt loads that JB Hunt wouldn't allow me to haul for them. Well, it's going to take a minute for it to get off the ground. And Walmart has a brokerage now too. But their loadboard has issues. I've not been able to log in. So our brokerage uses Highway for onboarding carriers, but Highway does not have access to our loads on our TMS. Good. Gary Cook, good morning. Covered Wagon, what's up? Good morning. Wonder if a guy not got in good with FedEx, could he just run FedEx loads? Seems like it's possible with what you're saying. Gen Z, here's the thing. You can take any broker, a good one, okay, that have a ton of freight. Let's use FedEx, for example. All you do is contact a broker from any brokerage, right? Let's say you're over calling 30 people for every load, right? Let's say you're over that. All you got to do is call one of these brokers and say, hey, man, I'm looking at this load from here to here. And then go, what's coming out of there? And then what's coming out of there? Can you get me out of there? See if you can link up 3 or 4 or 5 loads. You develop a relationship, you develop a repertoire, and within the second or third load, you're going to know how they handle their business. Now, when it comes to Uber and CH and TQL and all these people that have their own load boards, what you'll find is they have reloads already listed. So like, oh, here's a load going from, say, St. Louis to Chicago. And then here's the we're coming to Chicago. Now, it's a great strategy. We had a guy early in Like Trucking's age. He was one of our top earners, and that's all he did. He did Uber. He was an ex-Schneider IC. He treated the Uber load board like the Schneider load board. But the only way that works is that you got to be willing to go anywhere and everywhere. Right? Because I tried that at Landstar. I hooked up with an agent, and she was like, yeah, do this, and I've got this and this. Oh, I don't go there. Oh, man. I was too like, I don't know. And she was like, okay, well, call me when you need something. Click. And that's kind of where we're at. So something to keep in mind. So Gen Z, yeah, that's a possibility. On 38654, good morning. Riding Dirty, top of the morning, everyone. So, that's kind of what we're looking at. So one of the things I want to show you, let's share the screen here. All right. Thank you for the comments, by the way. Keep them coming. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. This is the market report that CDN gives me. Van is really soft. I mean, we're not down here, but it feels like it at times. And I'll show you a trend that's not sitting well with me. Reefers in the loose category. Flatbed was in neutral and it's gone down. So flatbed has decreased a little bit. But the overall market is still soft. So guess what? You're still going to struggle a little bit. You're still going to, you still got to have a strategy in place. National spot rates according to DAT. As you can see, it went down 5 cents a mile in van. I saw that. I felt that. Because when I'm dispatching 5 trucks and I'm losing loads left and right over 50, 100, 200 bucks, then I know that this trend is downward. Now, if it was like 205 in July and then $3 a mile, the next month, and my revenue for each truck had gone down, then that's a me problem. As long as the drivers were running and no truck issues, no health issues, that kind of thing. But I'll experience it and then I see it. Now, the number is irrelevant, right? It's the trend that I look at. And I've said this over and over. I sound like a broken record. I hate saying it because I'm tired of hearing it. But look at reefer. It's down quite a bit. Flatbed's down quite a bit. So this is August. Historically, August to me has been kind of a bad month or a lower month. I heard somebody once said that the best time to take a vacation as an owner operator is February and August. And I've got notebooks that will reflect that, right? So that's what we're looking at, right? Let's see. Capacity is listening, but still tighter than 2034. Unemployment rate's on a trend up. And here's a chart for changes in consumer spending. Why is this important? Well, because this is what people are spending their money on. Clothing and footwear, 4.2%. Furnishings, household equipment, food services and accommodations. That spending's going down. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Now you could sit there and blame the politics and the politicians and the presidents and all that stuff, but it's not going to really do any good. You're just making a bunch of echo. What are you going to do about it? You have no control over that. So what are we going to do about this? Right? National contract rates are decreasing as well. The shippers are tightening the grip. They do not want to be caught paying out the yin yang for their product to be moved. Van outbound's at 5.14%. Flatbed outbound is 13.92%. And the reefer outbound is at 10.818%. Brake safety week is August 24th through the 30th. They'll have an impact on capacity. Now, I've had a couple of drivers tell me that the truck stops have said that they've noticed a huge decrease in drivers that can't speak English. And I think that's why rates have improved a little bit in and out of at least the Dallas area. And so keep that in mind, right? CDN, does any broker have a carrier platform where carrier updates load status for active loads, ability to upload POD invoice, available loads near where loads that close to delivery post available trucks? They all do that. You can upload, like JB Hunt gives you a negative score if you don't do any of that. If you don't use the app, if you don't update, if you don't upload the POD, you get a lower score. Then that affects your negotiation leverage. If someone wanted to run just the low boards and run the hot freight times for two different trailers, which two trailers should they have? I would say on the growth side, it'd be reefer and flatbed, but on the practical side, and mind you, I've never, my only experience with refrigerated freight is with my dad, right? So, but in van, I think van and flatbed is what I would do. But here's the thing. Here's a secret, right? Here's a little secret. If you have a person that you can team with that lives in the same household, in other words, like husband and wife team, you know, father son team, mother daughter team, you can make some really good money right now. Because not because there's a ton of team loads, but because the other frustration I've had this week is scheduling. They're either next to impossible or there's too many days on it. And so if I got a driver that's emptying out at 6 a.m., there's the perfect load, but it doesn't pick up till 8 p.m. But then it delivers 9 a.m. the next day, 600 miles. I'm seeing a ton of that all across the board. All the brokers have these kind of loads, every single one. And that was the majority of my frustration last week. Yeah, there were times where I couldn't get the rate, but I just wanted a load that fit scale wise. And so that's the biggest frustration. And I think that the English speaking thing has a big part of that. And I think that's why you're seeing this rash of carriers that are switching their signs at the truck stops. Or they're claiming they have a team member when they don't. And so, you know, like if you can find like those loads, cheap freight hauler that you and I have talked about out of Georgia, man, if you could do those as a team, you can do those in half the time. I know because I used to dispatch that. We would get that stuff out of Georgia and we get the stuff out of Wisconsin. And we would get it done in half the time. Because hours of service were not where it was a no, it was nothing. Right? CDN says, I believe a chunk of loads are moving off Loadboards. Do TMS now offer tender waterfalling? I have no idea what that means. Broker creates a load and has sent the top 5 carriers in lane. If none accept, say within 20 minutes goes to 10 more. Yeah, I'm seeing that. So I do flat and van sit next to each other. It depends on who's paying that day. Reload's better for flatbed, winter better for van, summer's flatbed, just my 2 cents. The people that I saw doing really well at Landstar, that's what they did. They own their own trailers and they would go back and forth between them. The toughest part was keeping up on the 120-day inspections. Got a call last night for a power only load I've run before, 300 miles, $1,900. This $2 mile load I'm on is costing me, but if I was home, they wouldn't have called, right? Essentially, the underwater falls down their carrier. Okay, I see what you're saying. Then ranking, if load is not covered after a certain time period, then it may end up on a load board. Relationship with brokers matter. I agree with that. Gen Z, my thoughts are the same. My boss wife approved the purchase of a Conestoga, but I'm going to wait until the first of the year because I know flat will start slowing down. I've dispatched a Conestoga. It's a little bit more challenging. Conestoga, I think, would be you would definitely want some relationships going. I would not do a Conestoga if someone gave me one, right? Way too many shippers don't load them near me. Yeah, so I would do some research on that cheap freight. I agree with Gen Z on that. Now I'm gonna shut the screen off for a second, so I got to look up something here. Now we've been talking for what 40 minutes. I have not showed you one load board at all. I apologize. I went too late on my live feed. Let me reply to this text. All right, let's take a look at some low volumes here. Let me minimize that, put this up, close that, and then put the screen back up here. Oh, I'll turn that down. Bad enough to hear me once. You want to hear me twice. Jeez. Gosh. All right. Share screen. All right, let's switch this to van. As you can see, the typical same stuff, right? Arkansas has slowed down a little bit, but DAT shows good volumes. Arizona is actually paying a little bit better coming out. But don't be chasing the money up here because you're not going to find anything coming out unless you go to California. But there's all these states. Everybody just heads to California. And once you're out west, you're out west. You know, it's tough to get back east unless you come out of California. And most of those lows are going to like New York, PA, Florida, Wisconsin, you know, instead of like, I don't know, just something to keep in mind. I've been working on a Western strategy and I haven't quite figured things out. Steve, I hope you've ridden that super cool pedal bike. No, I have not. I am, there's an issue with the bike that I need to address. So, Bluetooth has connected, so pre-trip is complete. Have a great day, everybody. All right. Chief Freight, thanks for coming in. Good talking to you the other day. Let's take a look at Missouri. Let's take a look at Missouri outbound. Here's one that's just posted for today. Today's August 6th. Fenton, Missouri to South Point, Ohio. Get a good look where it's at. 7.5 hours of drive time, 43,000 pounds. Rate check's got 1189. Cargo's got 1111. Scroll down here, you see some decent outbound numbers, so that's good. And then all the broker communication is right here. You can email, phone, message, bid. Once you're verified, you can actually bid from this load board, which is kind of nice. I've done it. I've booked loads that way. Kansas City, Columbus. This is a common lane, $1,200, 2-day run, but they probably got it posted for 1 day. Yep. Picks up the 6th at 4 p.m., delivers the 7th, right? 657 miles. So it's hard to retain fuel mileage when you got to run full blown 70 miles an hour the whole way. Number one. Number two, this is probably like a 8 a.m. appointment, right? This is what I'm talking about over and over and over. So let's say this is where the team thing comes in. Let's say that we can pull it. Let's say it delivers at 8 a.m. and we get loaded at right at 4. We get loaded early, right? You can drive straight through, but then you can still run the next day with the other team member to keep the truck moving instead of losing all day tomorrow, right? So there you go. So if you get this done, $1,200 in one day, then rinse, repeat, you can make $1,000, $1,200 a day doing that. Now, if you're two separate people with two separate bank accounts, two separate households, I don't, you probably still make money, but making $1,000 a day, that's $500 a day for each person. Is that enough to maintain the truck and your homes and all that stuff, right? So let's go to Georgia here. I'm going to show you the outbound numbers here. Highest paying loads coming out of Georgia going right back to Florida. Like here, 324 miles for $900. Right? Let's sort this by rate per mile. It's all. Oh, here's $25 a mile going to Smyrna, Tennessee. Axle loves to do this. They love to we don't want to post $595, so we're going to post $5,950. So a lot of $600 loads. Florida, $1,150 to go 303 miles. $1,900 to go to Coconut Creek, Florida. Bowling Green, Florida, $1,300. See, that's where your big money is. Now, if we go by highest rate, you're going to see $1, $1.10, $1.79 to go Idaho. It's a little bit low because you're not going to get anything. Let's click on that. What are we going to get out of Idaho and van? Let's see. Let's scroll down. 0. There's 4 loads out of Meridian, Idaho going anywhere. So $1.79 for that ain't worth it to me. Now, if you can make that work, more power to you. $1.73 to Utah. $1.12 to California. Right? $1.71 to go to Colorado. So let's say you live in Colorado. Well, I don't know if I go to Georgia to Colorado one shot, I would go to probably Ohio and then to Colorado, or to Missouri and then to Colorado. So, and if we go to DAT, Georgia is showing 1757 coming out and 1111 going in. Or I'm sorry, 1700 going in and 1100 coming out. Florida's got 2100 coming in and 645 coming out. Idaho in here has 85 loads outbound. So, meanwhile, Illinois, 2,000 loads coming out. Indiana, 1,300 coming out. Illinois, I said Illinois. So Ohio, 1873 coming out. PA's got a lot of outbound. Texas has been through the roof on their outbound, which is why they're not paying to go in. Wisconsin's up to 1,228 coming out. Right? Arkansas's got more out than in. See what Missouri's doing. Missouri's got about even, really. North Carolina's more in than out. Let's see what South Carolina's doing. South Carolina's about even. South Carolina's been the most, has been the best on in and out ratios, but still, with North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida being soft, it affects that, right? So let's show reefer here. A lot of green, so that's good news. Washington, California, Texas, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri. Looks like Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina aren't great for you. And then the snack and the frozen processed stuff should be starting to ship now for the holidays. Flatbed, step deck, do those together. Look at the Northwest wake up here. Oh, look at that. Hello, Mrs. Death Touch. How's it going? Good morning. You would think with all the technology available when a broker's pickup and delivery dates, TMS would pop up an alert. The scheduled dates and times exceed legal ELD limits because they're not interested in the legal ELD limits. That's the problem. You know how many times I've looked at a load, emailed the person, they go, "Oh yeah, this, and this," and I'm like, "That really can't be done." Oh, we have a driver that does this every day. Okay, thanks for your time. And I stopped arguing with these people. I just say those times won't work. I said thanks for the reply. Those times won't work. I'm done. I'm done educating brokers on hours of service because most of them don't care. I know you care, CDN, but most of them don't because they got some guy from an office that's higher up than them saying, "Here's your 10 loads on your computer screen. You got to get them moved. Do what it takes." And it can't be over this percentage of profit or of margin, right? And that's it. That's where we're at. I'm kind of mad. I'm taking this coming Monday off. Well, you should get a hold of me. Talk to me. All right. So I mean that's what I've been dealing with. And the other thing that's frustrating is a lot of the different cities postings. There was one that was a 280-mile difference. And there was no need for it because the areas that I was looking in, it's not like some, and it was just stupid. It literally put it literally put everything in a different market. What it does is it makes that rate per mile look good. If we take out, I don't know, 200 miles of the trip, right? So if they post a load, it's 550 miles with a 50-mile deadhead, yeah, we can do that in a shift, right? As long as we get loaded in a good time. But when you call on the load, that 50-mile deadhead is actually a 200-mile deadhead, and it still has to be delivered 585 miles at 6 a.m. the next day. You can't do that. And that's the loads that a lot of these brokers are trying to move, at least in the van world. I know flatbed is flexible, a lot more open windows. That's been my frustration. And I'm not alone, right? A lot of people in my position and a lot of drivers that I've been talking to are dealing with the same thing. So it's not just a me problem. This is a problem. And I don't know what the other side of this looks like. So it makes me wonder, how were these loads being moved before? So that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of where we're at, CDN. So, but anyways, 48065, if you want to try out the 123 Loadboard for free, it has great tools. You can find loads, you can build your trip, you can keep track of your loads, you can post your truck. It's got a market rate, which is the tool I use the most, profit calculator. mileage calculator, which, if you're trying to determine tolls, both the profit calculator, mileage calculator will help you with that. You can store your documents, and you got all kinds of different things here that you can take advantage of. 48065 if you want to check it out for yourself. I will try to go live Friday, but not making any promises. I appreciate everybody for coming in and having patience with me at the times that I'm not posting videos. So with that being said, strength for today, hope for tomorrow. Yeah. Peace be with you.